A quiet hum pulsed through the silver-veined roots of the ancient star temple, the kind of hum that made people think of sleeping monsters or malfunctioning coffee machines, depending on how long they'd been stuck on Virlia. Theo Quinn, human, linguist, and currently very lost, stumbled through a curved corridor made of something that looked suspiciously like sentient coral and smelled like citrus and regret. "Note to self," he muttered, pulling up his jacket collar against a breeze that definitely shouldn't exist indoors. "Don't trust alien signage. A picture of a droplet does not always mean bathroom." His boots scuffed across a platform that blinked awake under his step. A line of bioluminescent tiles lit up in a friendly, deeply suspicious sequence leading forward. He considered turning back. He did. And then he kept going, mostly because the path behind him had just sealed itself with a hiss that sounded entirely too judgmental. Somewhere above, gears shifted, or bones, or both. The temple had been dormant for centuries, according to his briefing notes. Abandoned. Sacred. Absolutely off-limits without express Virlian permission. But his translator ban hadn't said anything when he wandered in, and that technically made this an honest accident. Or at least a legally ambiguous one. The corridor opened into a chamber, massive, hollow, humming louder now like it knew someone had arrived. Spiraling murals carved into the walls depicted battles between tall, long-eared warriors and shadowy, tentacled foes. One of the figures bore a resemblance to the very suit of armor standing in the center of the room, 10 feet tall, sculpted from shimmering alloy with veins of something pulsing faintly purple. Its helmet hung open, revealing a space just large enough for a very ambitious person with no sense of self-preservation to step into. "You've got to be kidding me," Theo whispered. "Please don't tell me you're going to try it on," came a voice behind him, light, exasperated, and unmistakably sarcastic. "That would really ruin my day." Theo jumped, spun, and found himself facing a woman, or what looked like a woman if women came with metallic blue skin, hair like braided starlight, and ears long enough to be aerodynamic. She stood with arms crossed, leaning casually against a wall like she'd been waiting for him to bungle into sacred history. Her expression said amused and suspicious, and maybe mildly hungry, though that might have been projection. "You're not supposed to be here," she added, "unless you're part of the catering crew for the Festival of Blinding Mistakes." Theo cleared his throat. "A bathroom, classic excuse, works on every planet. I'm serious, there were signs." "I followed the droplet." She looked past him, squinting at the corridor. "That's the symbol for internal purification chamber. It's not a toilet. It's a place where monks used to cleanse their souls through exposure to screaming winds and tax documents." Theo blinked. "You're joking." "Am I?" She grinned, walking closer. "Name S. Zelrana. I'm technically a princess, unofficially an archeo thief, and at the moment very curious about why a human in a discount jacket is sniffing around my ancestor's legacy." Theo, linguist, cultural observer. "I didn't touch anything except the floor, maybe the wall, one mural, and that pedestal that looked like a coffee table." Zelrana walked a slow circle around him, eyes narrowing with interest. "Do you know what that armor is? Historical relic, battle suit of Queen Elvira, last of the Veilbreakers, slayer of shadows, etc. There was a pamphlet. It's also dangerous and sentient, and sometimes explosive." "It's not going to explode right now, is it?" She shrugged. "Only if you make it mad, or if you make me mad and I convince it to explode out of spite. It listens to me, sort of." Theo swallowed. "Well, then maybe I should just go." But she was already stepping up beside the armor, one long finger tapping thoughtfully on its thigh plating. "You know what's funny? This thing never reacts to Virlians anymore. It's supposed to bond with a worthy warrior. Chosen one. The usual destiny drama, but it just sits here, quiet like a sullen teenager. I'm not sure I'm helping your case here. No, see, that's why it'd be funny. You're clearly not a warrior, no offense." "None taken. I once sprained my wrist opening a jar of quantum pickles." "Exactly, so what if you put it on?" Theo stared at her. What if I what? Just the helmet or one gauntlet come on for laughs. It'll definitely do nothing, and I get to say I tricked a human into touching the holy armor of Vera. My ancestors would haunt me with pride. I don't think mocking sacred relics is a good idea. I think being a boar in an ancient alien temple is a worse one. She gave him a look so teasing, so full of challenge, that his brain, already mildly overwhelmed by scent triggers and alien gravity fluctuations, just shut down its better judgment circuits. Fine, one gauntlet, and if I die I'm haunting you. Deal. He stepped forward, the armor pulsed once. Zelrana's smirk faltered. Wait, that's... The gauntlet moved, snapped open. Theo flinched, but it didn't clamp shut. It slid over his hand like a second skin, cool and electric. Runes lit up across its surface, flowing up his arm, humming into his spine. "Oh no," Zelrana muttered. "Oh no what?" The rest of the armor reacted. Piece by piece, it opened like a blooming mechanical flower, wrapping around him with terrifying precision. Theo's feet left the floor. His vision filled with symbols, data, voices whispering in frequencies his brain didn't recognize but somehow understood. Zel, help. She backed away, hands up, eyes wide. I was kidding, it was a joke. You're not supposed to actually be the chosen one. Light filled the chamber, the murals lit. The temple groaned, ancient systems booting up after centuries of sleep. Outside, across the moon, pulse beacons flared. In the silence that followed, Theo floated gently to the floor. The armor sealed around him, golden and violet, alive and awake. He looked at his reflection in a nearby polished obsidian plate. "Oh hell," he whispered. "I'm a space knight." Zelrana sat down on the floor, blinking. "I was just trying to mess with you. I was just trying to find a toilet." "Well," she sighed, "now you're a living prophecy in a weaponized death suit, so that's going to complicate lunch." "Zel, yeah, I can see through walls." "Cool. I can hear your heartbeat accelerate every time you realize this isn't a dream. It's really not, is it?" "Nope." Theo stared at his gauntlet. It pulsed once like it was enjoying the situation. "So," he said faintly, "now what?" Zelrana tilted her head, grinning despite herself. "Now we run." And then the ceiling opened up with a siren, and 30 drones descended from the clouds above, each one shouting in a different dead dialect. "The armor has chosen. The war resumes." Theo whimpered. "Seriously," Zelrana said as she grabbed his armored arm and dragged him toward a hidden exit, worst bathroom trip in the history of sentient life. The tunnel Zelrana dragged him through was narrow, zigzagging, and unreasonably humid. Theo swore he could hear the walls sighing at him. Not metaphorically, actually sighing. Long, damp, disappointed sighs, like the architecture itself knew he was out of his depth. "You're sure this is an exit and not some kind of digestive tract?" he asked, ducking under a low arch pulsing with algae-colored light. "Depends. Are you feeling processed? Emotionally, absolutely." She didn't slow down. "Good. That means the armor hasn't bonded to your gastrointestinal system. We've had some cases." "I don't want to know. You really don't." Behind them, distant booms echoed. The drones weren't fast, but they were persistent. Theo didn't know much about ancient war machines, but he was fairly sure anything that spoke in 13 languages and had claws didn't plan to negotiate. His legs moved mostly out of fear and partially from the suit, which seemed to have decided he was worth keeping alive. It adjusted his steps, stabilized his gait, and once, without asking, shocked his thigh when he tried to slow down. Like a very assertive personal trainer with a vendetta. "I think your dead ancestor has control issues," he panted. "She ruled 5 star systems and decapitated a storm god. Of course she had control issues." Theo glanced at her. "Wait, an actual storm god. Technically a weather AI with a god complex, but she still cut its head off." They reached a chamber that looked like someone had asked a jellyfish and a cathedral to design a hideout. Tendrils of glowing cables hung from the ceiling, swaying in rhythm with the low thrum in the walls. Zelrana slammed her hand on a platform and a small console buzzed to life. Okay, she said. Good news. We're near a tram junction. Bad news. The tram hasn't worked since the last collapse. That was 2 centuries ago. He stared at her, she stared back. Don't worry, she said, clapping him on the shoulder. We can kickstart it. With what? You. Excuse me. The armor's humming like it wants to be useful. Let's see what it can do besides ruin ancient prophecies and attract homicidal relic drones. Before he could object, she grabbed his arm and shoved it into a port in the console. The armor flared, the room lit up. Somewhere deep in the walls, something grunted awake. I don't think that was a machine, Theo whispered. Let's hope it was a machine. The floor beneath them vibrated, then shook, then tilted. With a squeal like a dying beast, the walls peeled open to reveal a gravity tram, half-wrecked, covered in vines and glowing with unnatural light. Zelrana gave a little bow. Your ride, Veilbreaker. Theo groaned. Please don't call me that. Too late. You wore the armor, you get the title. It's like a free t-shirt but with more prophetic consequences. They leapt aboard. The tram coughed to life. The doors closed with a creak that sounded unsure of itself. Then the whole thing shot forward, fast enough to knock Theo sideways and flatten his hair into a shape last seen in wind tunnel tests. Zelrana whooped. Theo screamed. Do trams usually do this? He shouted over the roar. Only when they're angry. What? Nothing. Just pretend it's a theme park ride. Theo clutched the armrests as they rocketed through tunnels lined with shimmering glyphs. The lights passed too fast to read, but the suit recorded them automatically. He didn't ask how he knew that. He just did, which was concerning. The tram curved, dipped, and launched them into a vertical climb that made Theo question every decision that had led him to this moment, including saying yes to linguistics school and trusting alien iconography. When it finally stopped, wheezing like it had just run a marathon in boots, they staggered out into what might have been a city once, before gravity inversions folded half the buildings into impossible angles and time anomalies left clocks stuck in the same second for centuries. Zelrana squinted up at the twisted skyline. The Echoes district. I thought it collapsed. Theo turned in place, armor adjusting smoothly with each step. Does time normally tick backwards here? Just don't look directly at the broken hours. You'll get a migraine. They ducked into a side alley where the shadows didn't flicker ominously. Theo tried not to stare at the floating fish made of static. So, he said, are we just going to wander around until someone attacks us again? No, we're going to see an expert. Is it another ancient warrior, mystic monk, forgotten AI with secret knowledge? Zelrana grinned. Better. My uncle. He sells bootleg relics and illegal snack paste, but he knows things. Theo followed, stepping around a puddle that briefly tried to bite his foot. Is everyone in your family like this? Only the charming ones. They found her uncle living in a crater-shaped home made of welded-together hover pods. He wore an apron that read "Kiss the Archivist" and had a beard like molten copper. He squinted at Theo. You brought the armor into my house. I brought lunch, Zelrana said, tossing him a wrapped bundle. He sniffed it. Smells like fungus and consequences. I knew you'd love it. Theo watched them banter while trying to keep his gauntlet from accidentally syncing with the vending unit. It tried to offer him 17 types of energy gel and a sermon. Uncle Niv eventually turned to Theo. You're bonded. Theo nodded. I didn't mean to. Destiny rarely asks permission. Sometimes it just borrows your shoes and sets your life on fire. Theo blinked. You're very poetic for a man who sells contraband jam. It's not jam, it's paste. There's a difference. Now, tell me what you felt when it activated. Theo hesitated. Heat, light, voices, and a sense of falling upward, like I was being unraveled and reknit at the same time. Niv whistled. Yep, that's the Veil memory imprint. Veil is in, as in the null veil, the big bad. The cosmic parasite that eats realities like popcorn. If the armor bonded to you, it means the veil's stirring again. Wonderful, Theo said. Just what I needed. Galactic-level existential doom. You'll get used to it. I don't want to get used to it. Tough. Zelrana leaned against the counter. So what now, Uncle Doom and Gloom? Niv scratched his beard. Now we prep him. He'll start getting flash visions, languages in his head. Echoes of battles past. Some of it'll help, some of it'll make him scream. Theo looked pale. What percentage of screaming are we talking? 50-50, but don't worry, the first week is the worst. Zelrana slapped Theo on the back. Hey, look on the bright side. At least you're not boring anymore. Can I go back to being boring? Not unless you can unwear a prophecy. Theo sighed, armor humming like it was laughing at him. Outside in the sky where stars didn't twinkle so much as stare, something blinked. And somewhere far beneath the crust of Virlia, something blinked back. The dream started with a goat. Not a metaphorical goat or a goat from some alien planet with 3 heads and laser eyes. A regular Earth goat chewing on a sock. Thea tried to take the sock back. The goat bleated once, then exploded into a fractal of light and code. He woke up screaming, halfway suspended above the ground, armor pulsing with deep violet lines, eyes glowing in a shade he was almost certain wasn't FDA approved. Niv stood across the room, sipping from a mug labeled World's OKAYESD Uncle. You're adjusting faster than I thought, he said casually, like Theo hadn't just levitated out of sleep like a possessed toaster. Theo dropped with a grunt. I saw a goat, that'll happen. The goat exploded. Yep, there were symbols, voices. One of them said my name but backwards. Niv nodded, taking another sip. Standard memory resonance. The armor's something rose from the crater. An ancient construct shaped like a scorpion, built from shards of broken architecture and glowing with inner fire. It turned its gaze on Theo, scanned the armor, and bellowed in a voice like collapsing cities. VILBRKR, DENIED. Theo blinked. Excuse me. Zelrana pulled her blaster. That's new. The scorpion lunged. Theo dodged barely, the armor reacting faster than thought. A shield flared into place. His left gauntlet extended into a blade he didn't know he had. Okay, he muttered. So it's one of those temples. Zelrana ducked under a flailing tail, tossed him a grenade, and shouted, aim for the memory core. Where is that? Probably labeled something cryptic like Heart of Silence or Truth Gland. Theo hurled the grenade at the construct's glowing underbelly. It detonated in a burst of blue fire, knocking the thing backward. He charged, blade first, shouting in an old dialect he hadn't known 10 minutes ago. The scorpion reeled. A blast of light ripped through the battlefield. When the dust cleared, the construct lay still. Theo stood over it, panting, armor hissing, suit flashing soft pulses of acknowledgement. Zelrana walked up beside him. Well, that was dramatic. Did I just yell a war cry? You did, and your accent was decent. Theo looked at the cracked earth, the ruined guardian, the looming temple ahead. Please tell me there's no goat inside. No promises. They walked toward the entrance. Behind them, the scorpion dissolved into ash, carried by wind that whispered his name in languages no human had ever spoken. Theo rolled his shoulders. Still hate this planet. Zelrana grinned. You'll miss it when it kills you. The door to the temple of the hollow echo opened with a sound like 1,000 whispers inhaling at once, which was not comforting, but at this point, Theo had accepted that nothing in this ancient Moon Temple armor destiny situation would ever be comforting again. Inside, the air vibrated, not metaphorically, actually vibrated, like the molecules were excited to see them, or suspicious, possibly both. I think the walls are scanning me, Theo muttered, glancing at a pattern that seemed to blink when he looked at it. They are, Zelrana said, strolling in like she hadn't just helped kill a giant metal scorpion. This temple's built on an echo field. It listens, remembers, probably knows what color socks you wore yesterday. Theo frowned. I didn't wear any socks yesterday. Oh, then it definitely knows, and it's judging. They walked past columns that appeared solid until you looked too closely and realized they were made of braided light, not stone. Holograms flickered in and out, fragments of old battles. A woman with long ears wielding the same armor Theo now wore, and strange shadow creatures that looked suspiciously like anxiety with teeth. "Is that your great-great-great-whatever grandmother?" Theo asked, pointing at the warrior woman. Zelrana looked up, hands on her hips. "That's Elvira in her prime. This was her last stronghold before the Veil Wars ended." Theo watched as the hologram of Elvira hurled a spear through a creature made of static and entropy. It screamed in 6 tones at once before dissolving. "Your family reunions must be intense. You should see the dinner arguments. Once a cousin called the archivists putting average, and we had to evacuate the district." They reached the central chamber, circular, glowing with concentric rings of runes. In the center hovered a crystal the size of a small car, rotating slowly, pulsing in sync with Theo's armor. Zelrana tilted her head. "Memory core. That's where we ask nicely for information." Theo stepped closer, armor humming like it had just recognized an old friend. "Ask nicely. Technically, you just touch it and hope it doesn't try to fuse with your brain. That's not asking, that's volunteering as tribute." "Semantics." Theo sighed, muttered something about regretting all his academic life choices, and touched the crystal. A spark jumped from it to his palm. The room vanished. He was floating. Not in space, but in memory, strands of it, woven together in shifting threads of color and sound. He could feel the armor translating what wasn't meant to be translated. Emotion, memory, loss, triumph, paranoia, rage, and, oddly, longing. A voice echoed around him. "You are not the one I forged this for." Theo turned, or thought he did. The voice didn't come from any direction. "I know," he said. "This was not planned. You walk with stolen fire. Why?" "I didn't steal anything. I touched it as a joke." That is how most stories begin. Images flashed, Elvira standing on a battlefield, shadow creatures tearing through reality, stars blinking out, and then silence, her final stand. A circle of light, a gate, a sacrifice. Theo felt the pain. It wasn't just death, it was containment. She hadn't defeated the null veil, she had trapped it, and her consciousness, what was left of it, had been left behind as its warden. "You didn't win," he whispered. "You sealed it away." The voice paused. "Victory is a matter of time, delay is a kind of triumph." The crystal pulsed, data streamed into his mind, coordinates, patterns. A place deep beneath Vyrlia where the veil's prison still pulsed. Weakening, cracks forming. He saw himself, wearing the armor, standing before the veil. And then he saw another version of himself, eyes black, voice hollow, laughing while stars bled. Theo snapped back with a gasp. The chamber reassembled around him. Zelrana was mid-sentence. "So if you got stuck in an infinite scream loop, I was going to poke the crystal with a spoon. You good?" He nodded, breath shaky. "Define good." "You're upright, that counts." He looked at the crystal. "She's still here, part of her." Zelrana's expression shifted. "Elvira. She's not resting, she's guarding. The veil, it's not dead, it's waiting." Zelrana exhaled, running a hand through her braid. "That explains the uptick in weird dreams and possessed fauna lately." Theo sat on a low pedestal that might have been a chair or a sacrificial altar. He didn't care. "She gave me a location, deep, beneath the Echo Fault." Zelrana nodded. "The Still Hollow. Lovely name, terrible tourism." Theo looked down at his hands. "I saw a version of me, corrupted, like the armor bonded too far, like I became what the veil wanted." She sat beside him, bumping his shoulder. "Well, don't do that. It wasn't up to me." "Sure it is. You're Theo." Slightly whiny linguist with a hero complex and surprisingly decent reflexes. "The armor chose you, or you chose it, or it was fate, or it was cosmic indigestion. Doesn't matter, you're still you." He glanced sideways. That almost sounded like encouragement. "I've been practicing, don't get used to it." A rumble echoed through the temple. The lights flickered. A breeze that had no business existing indoors swirled around them. Theo stood. What now? Zelrana drew her blaster and cracked her neck. "Now, We follow the cryptic coordinates into the dangerous underground where logic breaks down and shadows whisper our names. Theo raised an eyebrow, and after that, hopefully a snack. Another rumble, this one louder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Theo's armor flared, something coming. Correction, someone. A figure stepped from the entrance, tall, hooded, floating a few inches off the ground, eyes glowing with internal starlight. Zelrana's blaster came up. Monk or cultist? Theo tilted his head, possibly both. The figure spoke. Veilbreaker, you have been summoned. Theo sighed. Of course I have. Zelrana groaned. I just sat down. The figure raised a hand. A symbol burned in the air, an ancient sigil from Theo's dream. The walls around them pulsed in response. Zelrana leaned close and whispered, "That's either an invitation or a death sentence." Theo nodded, "So Tuesday." They stepped forward. The figure turned, gliding down the hall. Theo looked back once at the crystal, still pulsing gently. He didn't hear Elvira's voice again, but he felt her warning linger in his bones. Delay is a kind of triumph, but it does not last forever. The elevator they took was not really an elevator. More like a tube of light that hummed show tunes from a civilization that hadn't existed for 1,000 years. Zelrana hated it instantly. "I swear if it starts playing Ballad of the Ten-Legged Liar, I'm jumping out," she muttered. Theo clutched the sides. "You think jumping out of a plasma elevator is safer than enduring ancient musical theater? It's about dignity." The hooded monk floated beside them in total silence, possibly asleep, or possibly transmitting mystical wisdom into the ether. Or maybe he just liked being dramatic. The descent lasted exactly 108 seconds. Theo counted, not for any practical reason, just to keep from thinking about the fact that they were heading to the Veil's prison, a place older than most galaxies, deeper than the crust of Vyrlia, and according to one historian, extremely rude to guests. When they arrived, the doors opened with a puff of cold air, and a chime that sounded suspiciously like someone saying, "Good luck," in a sarcastic tone. The chamber beyond was vast. An inverted pyramid suspended in black void, held together by beams of frozen light. At the center was the Veil core, a swirling mass of data, entropy, memory, and hunger. It looked like it had tried to become solid once and gave up halfway. Theo stepped forward, the armor reacting instantly. Lines of light coursed along his limbs. The whispers in his head rose in volume, not painful but insistent. The monk floated ahead. "This is the seal, it is fracturing, you are the key." Theo turned to Zelrana. "Isn't this usually where someone says, 'No pressure'?" Zelrana shrugged. "I figured you were used to pressure by now." The monk raised his hands. The chamber shifted. Panels rotated. A console emerged from nothing, glowing with input ports that matched the shape of Theo's gauntlets exactly. Theo approached slowly. The armor hummed a warning. Deep inside, it remembered what happened last time it touched this place. Zelrana walked beside him. "You sure about this?" "No, but the dreams, the scorpion, the exploding goat, it all leads here." "You really need to stop bringing up the goat." He placed his hands on the console.